Better.
Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, October 1st, 2024. I'm John DeWanzik, and this is the regular meeting of the Avon Lake Board of Municipal Utilities. The time is somewhat in dispute, but it's about 6:30 p.m. We just had a little technological adjustment to get everybody's faces on the screen, but in those faces are the people that are with me tonight on the board. To my left, Mr. Abram and Mr. Rush, and to my right, Mr. Ricky and Mrs. Schnabel. Also with us here tonight is Chief Utilities Executive Rob Monroe, and at the table we have Chief of Utility Operations, Mr. Greg Urinich. Also at the table is Attorney Connie Carr of Sealy Savage Law Firm. And in the audience tonight, the chair recognizes Councilwoman Amy Gentry and Citizen Nicholas Mondello. Tonight's meeting is being broadcast by way of Facebook and YouTube, and there is an opportunity for public input. If you would type comments, Mr. Urinich will be recognizing them at the appropriate time. As we have a quorum tonight, we'll take a vote of any three board members at least to pass any motion that is made, except for a motion to go into executive session, which there is one planned for tonight, which will be taken by a individual roll call vote. All others will be voice votes. Mr. Rush, do I have anything else that I should mention perfunctory?
I believe you hit them all.
Okay, good. So first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the September 17th meeting. Are there any comments on those?
No.
Hearing none, then they are approved as submitted. We do review them before we vote on them. Next item is the aforementioned public speakers. First of all, Mr. Urinich, any takers so far?
No digital comments tonight, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
And in the audience, anyone care to make any statements at this time?
No.
Okay, thank you. So there'll be another opportunity for public speakers later in the meeting, and that includes for people writing in from internet world. Next item tonight is correspondence. Mr. Monroe.
I do not have any correspondence to pass along this evening.
Okay. All right, then let's go on to expenditures on your goldenrod sheets. Is there a motion to approve these?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I move to approve Avon Lake Regional Water expenses from September 13th through September 28th, 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Abram. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Schnabel. Discussion.
One question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Fund 701 on the first page, number 56, the association dues. Just one explanation of what the organization does.
Mr. Monroe.
Yes, I can answer that. The Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies, because our service area, we serve upwards of 200 and almost 250,000 people. That puts us in that classification with a lot of the large metropolitan water agencies. So this is a group that we joined to share in services as far as lobbying efforts for items that are specific for the water industry. So
Where are they located?
the main office is located in Washington, D.C. And I actually had the opportunity this summer. There was a conference that was held in Cleveland, and the CEO of the agency attended that conference, and he had reached out to me, and him and I met, and we discussed how the organization can assist us in specific efforts for us in Ohio, and it aligns with what they're doing at the national level as well.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Thank you.
Anything else? Anyone else?
Mr. Rushton.
Mr. Rush?
Yes, two funds, Fund 703, line 3, and 762, line 5. The title agency, First Nationwide, with title searches for the easements. This is more of a question of the timing. Some of this goes back to February, and how are we doing the project overall in terms of securing those easements?
Yeah, so this actually was an old invoice that there was some change in personnel that on their end getting transmitted through our attorney's office, and then the invoice actually getting to us. So this was work that was done last year. So it's an old invoice that we're paying. As far as the easements, we cannot continue on easement acquisition until we have the redesign completed. We're waiting on the Bram Hall is doing the base maps for the suction line, and also for certain segments of it along the railroad tracks because of the issues that we've had with Norfolk Southern and their contractor Rail Pros on our license agreement. We changed the route so that we're going through a public right-of-way. We're expected to have those design. There was a total of 8 sheets, new sheets that had to be done. We expect to have those by end of October, beginning of November. Once we have that, then the legal descriptions, those will also be updated. They can be provided to Attorney Carr so that she can then continue her easement acquisition work with those property owners.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll close discussion. All in favor of the motion to approve, say aye.
Aye.
It is approved. Next item, I think will be one to sit back in your chair, get comfortable, and Mr. Monroe will take us through the HZW environmental report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did receive the final independent environmental report that we hired HZW environmental consultants to complete. The scope of their work was to review all of the environmental work at the property that we purchased from ALERG. It was the environmental consultant for ALERG, Deegan and Associates, our consultant for Dantis. There was a phase 1 and a phase 2 conducted by each of those consultants. So 2 phase 1s, 2 phase 2s. We then wanted to have an independent review to ensure that, I guess the old saying, no stone goes unturned. So we did receive this final report. In summary, the overall opinion of HZW is that the property does meet applicable standards for us to proceed with entering into the Ohio Voluntary Action Program and seek a no further action letter, the NFA. And along with that no further action letter comes from the director of Ohio EPA would come a covenant not to sue. And, an easy way of explaining that is that gives us, that's like the gold standard, the NFA, that's the gold standard. And that protects us. And it also protects us for the future that if we decide to sell any or all of that property, we cannot be sued for any of the environmental conditions there. So again, it's a favorable report. I would point out that there was one part of the environmental work that Verdantis did for us that HZW did not specifically agree on, and that had to do with the fact of Verdantis looked at that property that there was a potential for us to have the multi-purpose trail that we've talked about with an easement for the Lorain County Metro Parks. They looked at that from a high frequency child exposure standard, and that the rest of the site was looked at as a commercial industrial standard. HZW felt that basically that looking at that high frequency child exposure standard was over conservative. It was very conservative and over cautious, which in this case, I'm perfectly fine with that. I don't have an issue with that. The high frequency child use standard, typically a good example of that would be if you had a daycare that was in maybe a strip plaza, and you would have 8 hours of direct contact, 5 days a week, 280 days out of a year.
Eating soil.
Exactly, in direct contact with the soil. So again, it was very conservative, and I'm okay with that. That Verdantis looked at it that way, and HCW did note that in their report. But I have spoke with Matt Connect, who is the certified professional that worked on this project, and again, he said that there's been a lot of good work done by Deegan and Associates, by Verdantis, and he offers that report and does stand by it. You have heard me talk before about Councilman Shamir had requested, and Councilwoman Gentry also had requested to have a technical discussion with regarding the property, and I said I wanted to wait until we had all of our environmental reports to have that. And so now that we have that, I am trying to get that scheduled so that we can have that discussion, and that would be also with our professionals that so from Verdantis and from HCW. So
Okay, questions for Mr. Monroe on that?
No, I'm glad it's a good report we got finally.
It is a good report, and as Mr. Monroe pointed out, very high standards is already being met on the exposure for children, but our intention would be to basically eventually have the land in like no restrictions, right? But you got to go through this step to get to the next step. Mr.
Has this
Ricky.
report been furnished to the city?
yes, I
Okay,
I
just
did
wanna make
provide
sure.
that via email to City Council, the
Fine.
mayor, the law director.
And Mr. Shamir? is-
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And the full report has all the tables and unpronounceable organic chemicals.
It does.
So,
I mean, I provided in your board packets just the written summary, which was about 5 pages. There's another, I don't know,
It's
9 or
14.
9 or
It's
10,
14.
yeah,
Total.
total pages.
That's okay.
It's in the email.
It's there.
I was trying to read it. Yeah.
Well, basically, if we look at the land, it's on the mend. I mean, things are going in the right direction, and that's where you want it to go. What we don't want, I think anybody in town is, barbed wire fence around 150 acres or whatever the amount of land is. So this is a good step in the right direction. And of course, any questions should initially go to Mr. Monroe from council people and so on. Mr. Rush,
No, I don't have any.
oh, you were giving me that kind of,
I'm sorry.
that hand thing.
Okay. One quick question.
Mr. Ricky,
Now, this is for only the property that we purchased.
That is
This
correct.
has nothing to do with the property north of Lake Road, has nothing to do with any other parcel that is on the south side of the road that we do not own, correct?
Correct. It has to do with the three parcels that we purchased.
Period.
Yes.
This
Right.
can't be extended to be used anywhere else, and if somebody wants to purchase the property north of the Lake Road, you would advise them to do the same thing?
absolutely.
Okay, just want to make sure that I understand exactly what this is for. Very good, thank
And
you.
quite frankly, Mr. Monroe and I already spoke of this. Like, even if I was a third party now that wanted to buy this property, I would want to have my own environmental people look at it, because you are abutting property that has not gone through this.
That's
So
what I wanted to
let's
make sure I
Make sure
understand
that,
exactly
everything.
what was included in this summary here
Right,
is strictly property that we now have possession of.
right.
Okay, thank you.
But as you correctly suggest, Mr. Ricky, everybody that would be involved in this, in fact, I would say if the city's involved in it, they should follow a similar path to make sure that everybody is satisfied, nobody, bought a pig in a poke or
No, that's
whatever,
fine.
so.
And I guess one last question, do we have to do anything with the properties that we are acquiring west of the current water plant and north of Lake Road as far as environmental studies?
No, there's the majority of those parcels are residential
Okay.
parcels. There is one parcel that years and years ago, there was a gas station, but we have already, again, let's talk the gold standard. That parcel has a no further action letter
Okay.
from many, many years ago.
Okay.
So again, we've any of those properties, we make sure we do our due diligence on.
Yeah, I just play devil's advocate a little bit to make sure that we're covered on anything that we're getting involved in from a real estate standpoint. Very good, thank you.
Okay, further to Mr. Ricky's questions, if you don't mind, Mr. Monroe, I'd like to clarify that there's actually 3 gas stations that are eventually, former gas station properties that are eventually in this mix. One, I think, is the used car center at
Jets.
Mr. Nick Mayer.
The Ford dealership.
And another that people, other than people that have been here a long time, there was a Shell station right next to the easternmost south side of Lake Road substation. It's a grass field to the right of if you were making a turn into Artstown from the westernmost entrance, there's a green, half an acre parcel to the right of the driveway as you head south. That was a Shell station. I don't know what the condition of those are, but they would need particular attention at that time, Mr.
In an ancient history, even before that, there was another service station where the bridge is built now.
Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah, that was,
Well, there was no I-90, it was US Route 6.
Well, and to that point that you made, Mr. Chairman, when, for instance, if you look at the Verdantis Phase 1 that they performed on our behalf as a buyer, they look at the surrounding properties. They contact the state fire marshal, the fire department, what type of use was this property? Was there reports of any type of chemical spills, oil spills, that type of thing? So that's part of the due diligence that gets performed on a site like what we bought from ALERG. They looked at all of those surrounding properties, ours being one of them, at the water reclamation facility.
Right.
So that, what has been the use there? Has there been emergencies where chemicals have spilled and potential for them to leach off site, get into any type of groundwater? So that work, was done there.
Okay. Good discussion. Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Mr. Monroe. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I do not. That is all I have for that. Thank you.
Thank you for all that. Next item is project updates from Mr. Urinich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the power plant update, Avon Lake Environmental Redevelopment Group, ALERG, continues cleanup and removal of the debris from the implosion. Really not too much new there, just a continuation, large amount of debris that they're taking care of. They're still tentatively planning November for the next implosion.
Have they given you a date or a time frame or anything on that?
They have not. Obviously, if I hear anything, I'll report that, but yeah, they have not said an exact date yet. ETL Design Services, no update there. For the water filtration plant improvements, Great Lakes Construction, they've been doing
Just a second.
So this is what will be the foundation for the new chemical feed building. They've formed the sumps for the chemicals that will be there. That'll be the sodium hypochlorite at the top of the screen, and then the aluminum sulfate will be on the bottom portion. You can see also that they've got marked out where the pads for the chemical storage tanks will be. Moving to the next slide.
Mr. Urinich, in that view, It appears to me that this is the basement that we're looking at. Is that correct?
This will be the foundation. So that is just a relatively thin layer of concrete there. That's kind of what they call the mud mat, just to keep the work area.
I mean, it seems to be below the generator is quite a bit above.
Correct.
I guess there's stairwells there.
No, it's going to be an 18-inch thick foundation. They've been forming up the rebar for both the foundation, the pads for the bases of the chemical storage tanks, and then ultimately it'll be a 1.5 foot thick foundation. So that'll really kind of start to bring that whole building back up to grade. You can see on the top half, they're forming the circular rebar structures. Those will be the base of the hypochlorite tanks, the bulk tanks. The smaller one is the day tank. So when you get the big chemical deliveries, those go into the bulk tanks, and you'll pump a smaller amount of that chemical into the day tanks. And that is what we actually have the chemical feed pumps drawing out of. So those will feed into the treatment process.
What are those blocky structures? There's two of them.
Right here.
One, the excavator is.
Those are the
has
sumps
bucket
that will help contain, if there were to be any spills, it would drain into there, and they would be able to pump out from there
I
as
see.
needed to.
Okay.
Is the way the building is designed. It's anytime you have a large amount of chemical, you have to have secondary containment. So those areas are being formed up to account for that.
Okay.
Let's see.
Mhm.
And then that's kind of an elevated view looking down on that. I was standing up on top of the flocculation basins, getting a picture there just so you can kind of see a little bit where it fits in on the site. Just a little bit, inland from the lake there. You've got the generator, the water tower that will be coming down. And that is our central high service pump building on the right hand of the screen. So one of the goals of this project, the way the chemical feeds are set up now, they're located quite a distance from where the chemicals themselves are actually being fed. Alum especially, that's one of the ones, alum and carbon. They're both housed right along the main structure on Lake Road. And there's quite a maze of piping that carries those chemicals from the dosage pumps back to where they're being injected. If you get into any sort of situation where there's buildup in the lines or any sort of blockage, it's currently quite a troubleshooting process to track that down. There's just such a great distance from where it's being metered to where it's being fed. Having the chemical storage back closer to where it's fed into the treatment system will help with a lot of things. One, cutting down on the amount of piping it's got to travel through to get to where it needs to be. As far as alum goes, having the pump so far away, you do see a little bit of a delay. If you make a chemical change, it's going to take a while for all of that to travel from where it's being metered. So that will help with the, responsiveness of the chemical feed. Another benefit for alum, for example, it gets fed into carrying water. So it's not a full pipe that's carrying the chemical. You're dosing the alum, and there's a steady stream of water that has to carry it that great distance. By having the chemical feed pumps closer and having, kind of a direct injection, you're not adding the water to it. So that's another thing that we feel is an improvement. This is just kind of a shot of the, in the background on the green grassy area. That's all rebar that's getting ready to be formed up for the walls and foundation of the chemical feed building. So they're doing a lot of the prep work, in the surrounding area, and then moving it over to the site where it's actually going to be formed. And are there any more questions about the?
Couple quick questions. How are we doing on engineering as far as RFIs, extras, contingency? Are we eating into any contingency? Have we run into any major issues with the engineering at this point?
We haven't run into any issues. If you recall, right at the beginning of the project, we used up some of our contingency because there were those optional bid items that we received no bids on. So
Right.
technically, yes, we have used some of the contingency, but we just executed 3 change orders, and those 3 change orders were a net credit back to us of about $65,000.
Because of,
There were various efficiencies because, again, once they start getting into the ground, and there's a lot of unknowns from over the years. So they, one of them was the coating on one of the tanks. What was spec'd. We were able to work with the contractor to find an alternative that ended up being less. So other than that, though, no, as Greg explained in those construction pictures, we're all very happy to get above ground because things go a lot more smoothly.
I guess my last question is, how are we on schedule?
As far as I know, we're on schedule.
Okay.
We haven't had any changes in schedule
Okay.
as far as
Good.
with the contractor as of yet.
Very good, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, you were gonna say something about the server room expansion?
For the SCADA communication upgrade, I had mentioned a meeting or two ago, we had met with CISA. They had kind of reviewed what we had laid out for the server room at the water filtration plant. Wanted to provide kind of a generic diagram, anything that's, I guess, kind of security sensitive, such as the main controls of our plant. We didn't want anything too detailed. But the small rectangular area on the left-hand side of the screen, that is the existing server room. A 3.5 foot by 6 foot, basically a closet. That's where the computer equipment for SCADA is currently being contained. When that plant was originally built, they did not have, I guess, the vision of how much involvement computers would have in operating a water plant at the time. So we have kind of made do over the years with just utilizing the area we had available. The SCADA servers are located in that closet, in that small rack. It takes up most of the space. It does not give the techs very much space to work in there. Accessing the equipment is very difficult. And there's definitely a lot of advantages to what we have proposed. By being able to create a room that has a controlled environment, monitoring the dust, the temperature, humidity, all of that. That is what we were looking to construct elsewhere in the plant. We have the space picked out. For comparison, you can see that existing server rack installed in the new server room. Obviously, that'll give us a lot more room to expand, access the equipment. Engineering services is currently proceeding with the cost estimate. At the same time, the operations team is going to be working on, I guess, how we can methodically move everything, keeping the current plant in operation, not causing any disruptions, planning for any unforeseen challenges. We're trying to work through all that, and then we can progress to actually bidding the job and getting that completed.
Okay, questions, Mr. Rush?
Climate control is critical. Any redundancies in those systems?
So we have 2 servers, a primary and a backup server for our SCADA that is completely redundant on site. The initial plan would obviously be then we were going to relocate the backup server, get that installed, tested, while the primary server is operating the plant. Anything that we have that's, I guess, redundant, we can move one at a time, keep things in service. And if there's anything unforeseen, that's the reason why we practice for a technical term, pulling the plug. Operators are all very well aware of how to run the plant without the assistance of SCADA. So in a perfect world, we won't see any of those disruptions, but if it does happen, we are prepared.
How old is the equipment?
The equipment itself is only about 4 years old. The SCADA system has been modernized multiple times throughout the years. So the equipment itself is modern. It's just housed in a not ideal location.
Okay. I know I work in IT, so we've had some acquisitions that had old equipment and we're like, yeah, I don't know if it's gonna come back when you turn it back on.
We got rid of Windows XP quite a few
Yeah.
years ago. So.
I still have Windows 7, but to your point about the Mrs. Gentry's point, you have emphasized in the past 4 years ago that we have an air gap between SCADA and the rest of the world, so there's no like hacking into that or anything.
Correct.
Anything, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Urinich. I did want to ask before we go on to the CUE report, you talked back to the HZW matter. You talked about the NFA, and somebody asked about the timing of this project. What about the timing of the NFA?
I don't have an exact timeline right now on the schedule of that. I am awaiting the scope and schedule from Mr. Gross from Verdantis, but that is our next step as we move forward to make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row. There may even be, cause for us to even take a few more samples just to have more data to back up our position as how we're classifying. But we also included as part of the Verdantis, original Verdantis scope was technical assistance through Ohio EPA. So as we enter into the voluntary action program, we would reach out to Ohio EPA asking for technical assistance on that. And basically working with them on certain areas, that of how we're going to make our application for the program. So I will have a schedule at a future meeting.
Okay, maybe kind of like a PERT chart type of thing that shows this comes after that.
Yes.
Would be helpful for the board.
Very, very good. I will have that.
Any other questions on that matter? Mr. Monroe, would you like to go on with your CUE report?
Yes, I don't have anything to report on this evening.
Thank you. Any members with reports? Mr. Abram?
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know about the article I provided members of the board, article from the Water Finance and Management magazine. It's an interesting article. It has two items of interest. In July of this year, EPA awarded over $20 million in grant funds for a workforce training and development program. And the funds for this year are all used up. Maybe next year we can keep an eye on the program, see if we have any need for our staff to receive a grant. And the second item is the EPA modified its 2011 consent decree with the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, which has been going on for several years, and we just wanted to update the board and how they're progressing after all these years.
So can you summarize their progress?
Well, it's getting better, but they have a long way to go. 2034 is the next deadline, I guess. It's a long way off.
Well, I think the littoral current of the lake kind of goes that way, so we're sending clean water
Yeah, that'll help.
that way there.
That'll help, John.
Any questions for Mr. Abram on that? Any other members with reports? Hearing none, we'll close that matter. Mr. Urinich, any public speakers in the internet world?
There are not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen of the audience, anything more tonight? Okay, we have a request for an executive session, Mr. Monroe.
Yes, I do not anticipate that there will be any formal board action after the executive session.
Okay, thank you. Would someone like to make the motion to go to executive session?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move to meet in executive session as allowed by Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22 G2 to discuss the purchase and/or sale of public property and to include the CUE, the CUO, and Attorney Connie Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Rush. Is there a second? Mr. Abrams seconds. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Ricky?
Yes.
Mrs. Schnabel?
Yes.
Mr. Abrams?
Aye.
Mr. Rush?
Yes.
Chairman votes yes. We will go into executive session when the room is cleared. Thank you, everyone, for